Let's see here. Welcome, Justin, to Raw and Cooked Vegan.
Hi.
And let's see. Now, your site is it's CarbedUp VeganMuscle. Is that what's the name of your YouTube channel?
Yeah, if you search CarbedUp VeganMuscle, that should bring me up. I think the URL is actually raw vega cala bb.
Okay. Okay.
It's linked to my Google account, so I changed the name to CarbedUp VeganMuscle. I thought
Gotcha.
it was a little easier to
Yeah,
grasp though. But,
I gotcha. All right. So the first thing I want to ask you is how you were raised in terms of diet and fitness. Like probably before you ever became really health conscious. What was your orientation, family orientation towards diet and fitness?
well, my family's very Appalachian. Um,
Okay.
have you ever visited like Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia?
Yeah, I live in Central Virginia, so
Okay.
yeah.
So yeah, every member of my family has come from that area. I live up in Ohio now,
Okay.
but when I was a kid, we lived in eastern Kentucky. My family still lives there, and we lived in the holler,
Yeah,
coal mining community. All of
dude.
my family was coal miners.
Cold winters.
Yeah, very cold winters.
Yeah.
When at some point my mom moved up here to Ohio, and when she separated from my dad, so I spent most of my summers and holidays in Kentucky, and I spent the rest of the year here in Ohio. So I've always
Okay.
associated Kentucky with being warm and vacation, and Ohio with being cold and school. So
It's funny.
um,
So, did you guys eat a lot of biscuits and gravy, that sort of thing? And
lots of biscuits, gravy, oats. Oats was always a big staple. Like I said, as coal mining is a very poor community.
yeah.
We grew a lot of food. Green beans was always big.
Okay.
We kept a chicken coop. We always had uh, pigs in the coal barn and things like that they would slaughter.
Okay.
And yeah, so I didn't really participate in a lot of that. I wasn't like a farm boy per
Yeah.
se. So I couldn't I don't really know a lot about that aspect. But my family in general kept that. So that was how we ate.
Okay. So
As
you
far
were you were you were you were pretty much focused on school.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
We weren't farmers either. I should say we just did what we needed to survive.
I got like a rural, kind of like a rural home life.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then my mom, her family was from Tennessee. They moved up here to Ohio, and is very different. So here in Ohio, it was much more like a traditional. There's lots of farmland in Ohio, of course, too, but we very indoor, not a lot of
Got you.
outside. Whereas in Kentucky, it was always climbing the hills. My dad would take me back in the holler, and we'd trap coons and things like that, and
Yeah. Yeah.
kept them as pets at one point. Coons don't make good pets. My
they
experience
can,
there,
they can
but
be pretty vicious, can't they?
yeah, we kept them in cages. I don't know what the point was, but so
so
yeah,
so
that's
basically,
kind
it
of my growth.
sounds like your Ohio experience was more like suburban America, and the Kentucky experience was more like living in the mountains, a little more being outside and that sort of thing.
Yep, for
All right.
sure.
And in terms of diet, would you say is your mom a little more conscious about diet than your dad,
For
or
sure, for sure.
okay?
My dad's for a long time he was on the pickle bologna diet, and whatever was in the fridge, and then at some point he moved on to the McDonald's and Burger King diet,
Okay.
and
Okay.
his health's pretty poor right
Yeah.
now. Just even trying to get him to eat more fruits and vegetables is difficult, even
Yeah.
with all the other stuff. So yeah,
Gotcha.
his health is pretty poor. He has actually spoken to a dietitian that because of his, I think he told me that his cholesterol was 900. I tried.
Wow.
I was like, I don't think that's right because I don't know. I just don't think that's right. But that's what he told me anyways. He might have been talking about his triglycerides or something.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. He was not really doing well, and they actually recommended you might try moving towards a more vegetarian type diet, and that was just out of the question for him. So
Okay.
he's just living with his health the way it is.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. So, would you say for you being a kid, you're a little bit spending time with your dad and you're spending time with your mom. You got these different ways of eating, and you're kind of just like, well, this is what I'm eating now, and not really thinking about it.
Yeah, I didn't care. I mean, it made no difference to me whatsoever.
Right, right.
Fried chicken. We had a lot of fried chicken at my grandma's. She was the
Okay.
Tennessee grandma, so
Okay.
I don't know what the differences are, but
All right. Now, I get the feeling that you were into fitness before you got into nutrition. Is that accurate?
not necessarily. No.
Okay.
I, I was kind of, yes, in fitness in general. I was into. I think when I first got into like the veganism and raw foods, I actually discovered it. Okay, yeah, I discovered it. I was watching videos of calisthenics, like the bar stars and all those like YouTube,
Yeah.
videos that
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
and I saw Frank Madrano, and
Oh.
I was like, oh, it said like hot new vegan calisthenics something. And it showed this guy with like this ripped six pack on there. I was like, oh, well, I want to look like that. So on the video, and I was like watching it, ready to like learn all about calisthenics and how to get jacked.
All right. All
And,
right.
he starts off the film and he shows all these chickens hanging upside down dead on the thing, and these cows like laying and like milk with like, talking about pus and blood, and I'm
Yeah.
like, well, crap, this is what I came here to see. It really did get me thinking. Like I thought this is for sure, this is wrong.
Yeah.
Um, and it left a mental impression on me, so I kind of just that was what caused me, and that was in 2011.
How,
And
how,
so I was into fitness and the idea of like trying to get fit and strong at that point, but not
okay.
weightlifting per se.
So like in high school, did you participate in sports at all or?
Yeah, well, I was in football my ninth grade year, my freshman year, and that
Okay.
was probably my first introduction to weightlifting. We did weightlifting for the summer to get ready for football, and then and when football season started, it's like, well, the weightlifting's done now, and I actually hated football. I don't like watching it. I really didn't care that much for playing it. But I was like, I want to go back to that weightlifting stuff. I like that. I was like, well, we don't do that. I mean, so I didn't touch another weight for many, many years after that.
Okay.
And I always thought if somebody would have just told me that weightlifting is a sport and you could do that just that, then I would have done it a long, long time ago.
Now that's interesting, man. Yeah. Okay. So you got through high school without.
I wasn't in sports after that though. I was in band. So
Okay.
I kind of just I moved on to that. I like that better. So
That's cool. What instruments did you play?
I played trumpet in the marching band in the high school there, and I went to school as a pianist, so that was music was kind of my thing for a long time.
Very, very cool, man. Very cool. All right. So in 2011, this is the first time you kind of had this light go on about maybe I'm gonna change my diet a little bit.
Yeah, it was purely ethical. At the beginning there, I was just um, living in Ohio. I'm around a lot of chickens, so I went vegetarian and I kept eating eggs
Okay.
for just a little while. And but the thing is, I wasn't sure what to eat, so
Yeah.
I thought I just wanted to start. I started researching then and looking up, and I found John McDougall, and I found that, and I had heard of raw foods. I don't know where the raw food part came in exactly then, but I wanted to know a way to do the McDougall program on raw foods, which is what led me to 80-10-10. I think I googled like high carb raw vegan because I remember seeing that symbol, the high carb
The
vegan or something. Yeah,
HCLFV or
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I thought, well, I should try high carb raw vegan and see what comes up. And then it just, that's where I discovered 80-10-10. And
That's cool.
Durian Wright,
So
I remember seeing him.
so it sounds like you were kind of saying earlier that your change in diet and your weightlifting kind of began at the same time. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I started the 80-10-10 diet in about December of 2011 there. So I probably fall or so, I went into the vegetarian thing. And at some point between the fall and the winter there, of December of that year, I discovered like uh, John McDougall, and I just eliminated all animal products.
Okay.
And I remember it was in December that I got into like the raw food idea.
Okay. And
And,
something.
and then I
Go ahead.
started
I'm sorry.
in May of 2012. I actually made a video a month later. That was one of the first videos I made on my YouTube channel,
All
was
right.
just a month after I'd started weightlifting.
Okay. I should have asked you this earlier, but in your childhood and say through high school, how would you characterize your health in general? Did you have any physical issues of any kind that were recurring, like even something simple like colds and flus or
Well,
acne, anything like that?
yeah, I was gonna say no, I didn't really have any problems, but yeah, actually, I did have a lot of congestion. I guess I'm like a lot of people. I didn't wouldn't even thought of that as a.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did have a lot of very bad allergies and congestion and things that I actually have once I eliminated the milks and or the dairy products and animal products in general. They really cleared up really well for me.
All
Uh,
right.
but aside from that, my weight fluctuated a lot. My weight would go way up, way down. I would shoot up to 220, and it's like, man, I need to lose some weight. And I mean, now if I was 220 and fairly lean, that would be excellent. But
Yeah.
it's 220 and very fat, and I'd shoot down to like, I think I'd be around 160 or so, but I'd be like really. Um, the concept of counting calories was foreign to me, so I would just like say, well, I can only eat like this much food at this meal, and I would spend a lot of the day hungry, so my weight fluctuated a lot.
That's pretty strong will, though. So you just use your will and just constrict your caloric intake to lose weight.
Yeah, yeah.
That's pretty intense.
That's over a course of 10 years or so. But
Okay. All right. Now, and you say you're about 220 now. How tall are you? Can I ask?
220 now.
Oh, you're not. Okay. Okay. Okay.
That'd be great, but no, I'm
Okay.
198 or so.
198. Okay. Okay. All right. So you kind of embarked on this, and when you say 80-10-10, does that imply automatically fully raw?
Yeah, yeah. For at least the first little while there, it was 100% raw, no cooked foods.
Okay.
They're evil.
All right. All right. Now, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you, man. So tell us a little bit about that. When you first attempted this, what were some of the things that arose for you? Were there any difficulties? Did you take to it right away? Was it easy? Were you finding people that you could talk to about it?
Yeah, I mean, I found like the 30 Bananas a Day website was very helpful because there's just so much information and so many experiences that people had had on the diet there.
Right.
And I could kind of look through those, even if I didn't agree with what they said. Like I could kind of decipher, this person's rational. They have good information. And
Yeah.
this person is way out there. I don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
But so I remember like looking up like, well, maybe this is just detox, and I heard that from a lot of people. And I actually kind of disagree with some of that thinking that just writing everything that happens off as detox, because I don't think that's always the case. But for me, at least in the beginning, it was. I got like rashes on my skin. I remember it looked like I had poison ivy.
Huh.
It's like, because like all this, it just looked like poison ivy is itchy and everything like poison ivy.
Wow.
But it was not. It was from the foods that whatever I was losing weight and things and all this stuff was coming out of my body. I remember driving down the road and feeling like high. I guess. I mean, I've never been high in my life, but I mean, I felt like that bubbly headed kind of like disconnected.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. That could have been like a candida die-off thing. That's
I
possible.
know.
Yeah.
But it went away after a couple weeks. It wasn't really long, and
Yeah.
after that I was pretty good.
That's interesting. Okay. So let's see. So walk through it for me. You kind of initially did a really intense 80-10-10, and then did you reach a point where you're like, hey, maybe I can have some cooked foods now and then, or how did that work out?
Well, really, it boiled down to money.
Okay.
I was a music teacher, and I was playing gigs and doing that kind of thing as a pianist. And I lost a few gigs that were regular and reoccurring. I wouldn't say I'm a particularly great businessman. So the idea of selling myself in that, I kind of am focused more on the skills. Like I play well, and rather than getting into the business side, I wasn't really great at that. So
Justin, I probably shouldn't say this, but to me that is a really good thing. I mean, it means, there's so many marketers and advertisers, and you saying that, it automatically says to me, this dude is probably a humble guy who doesn't like to sing a lot about himself. So anyway, go ahead.
well, those are the people making money. So
Well, that's the horror of it. That's
like
the
that.
horror. Yeah.
But I forget what I was saying now. That's a good point though. Yeah, so I just wasn't making a lot of money, and we were starting to dip into our savings account because I have a wife and 3 kids.
Okay.
So it was like, well, we really need to do, we need to make some changes. So we're very conservative. We own our cars. We have a house payment, and that's about the only real debt that we have. So we really try to be conservative about not going into debt or not falling prey to some of those financial problems that other people, get into a lot. They're very common.
That's great.
So, we just went to more of a starch-based diet where I could get lots of food for a fairly inexpensive amount of money. And
All right. Let me ask you to go in a little deeper on this, because I know some strict raw fooders will claim, I think they have an equation. What do they call it? Calories per dollar or something. I don't know. But
I'm not aware of other people doing that, but I've thought like that before too.
all right. So can you tell us a little bit about how much would you spend a week if you were buying all raw, and how much would you spend a week if you're buying raw with some cooked foods thrown in there?
For just myself,
Yeah, that would be good for one person, or if you want to do the whole family, that's fine.
we're looking at it for just myself because my family didn't necessarily follow me in like the raw thing. I tried to get them to do that, and it just was like, no, 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 this is not happening. But uh, myself alone for my caloric intake, it takes currently at 198 pounds, it takes 3,800 calories for me to maintain my current weight. Which I'm
Okay.
actually okay with dropping weight now that I did my competition. Um,
Okay.
but I needed to hit about that caloric intake in order to maintain weight. It would probably on 100% raw foods and getting all the things that I think are kind of important, getting greens here and there daily on a daily basis, green
Yeah.
foods, green leafy vegetables, and the fruits and things. I would say probably about $150 a week, just
Okay.
myself alone. Whereas it stands on cooked foods, I feed my entire family for about $150 a week.
That's a family of 5.
Yeah, 5. So
Yeah. I mean, that's just huge. That's huge. So I ask, raw fooders who are, militaristic about that, listen to this, that's a huge difference.
yeah, I mean, I have some friends that are very militaristic, realistic, and they
Yeah.
don't necessarily agree with them, but we're still friends. We don't
Right.
have to be a dividing factor.
Yeah. I mean, I respect raw fooders, and I think it's super healthy, and I think maybe it's possible that people can do it cheaply if they get really good deals and they live in a city where they can access these things. But I also know that it's possible to live in a place where it's hard to be economical on that kind of diet. So
I think I could do it a lot cheaper than I have. Uh,
yeah.
my food choices would suddenly decrease to a very, small. I don't want to live on bananas day in.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. So when you'd made this transition, you started to incorporate cooked foods. I noticed you have some interesting recipes. Like I saw you eating bananas with sweet potatoes. That's a cool thing. And
Yeah.
um, you put like a whole head of kale in a smoothie. What do you have some raw cookbooks, or where do you get these ideas? It's just stuff you came up with yourself, or what?
Just experimenting.
That's cool.
This is 2014. I started it in the very end, well, basically beginning of 2012. So I've had a couple years now to kind of experiment with different things, and I just Lots of people will comment on my videos about, what about food combining? Isn't that a bad food combining practice? And I don't know. I've seen people post things about food combining, and some of it makes sense to me, like citrus mixed with sweet fruits, like bananas. It just
Yeah,
doesn't taste good, so I wouldn't do that. So I'm like,
right.
yeah, that's a good idea because I don't like it. But if I did, I might feel differently. I don't know, but so I just really don't worry about it. I don't really feel like I have problems digesting food. I don't get like a stomach ache. I don't have any of those problems that people talk about. So if I did, I probably would be more conscientious. And if
You
other
know,
people recommend,
there's a beauty to that you're not encumbered with dogma. You can just kind of explore and you do what works. I love that. That's great. Um, so you said you eat about 3,500 calories a day. Is that right, or 3,800?
yeah, yeah,
Okay. All
I'm
right.
down a little bit now. The last few days, I haven't been counting or worrying about calories. I'm taking a break from worrying about that kind of thing.
All right. Yeah, I hear you. And I want to get more into the weightlifting, and we'll talk about why weight's an issue there. But let me ask you. I'm going to throw a couple of items at you, and I just want you to share with the audience the conclusions you've reached on each item. All right. So the first is B12.
I think that in general, most people should be, if you're a vegan, you probably should use some kind of B12 supplement over time. I think it's a wise decision. Not everybody will need to do that. So I know John McDougall and some of the other people that I follow have talked about how they've gone years and years without a B12 supplement of any kind and been fine. But the facts are that a lot of people do become deficient, and B12 deficiency is a very real and very serious condition. So I'm studying dietetics, so I look at all these factors. For myself, I haven't really supplemented per se with vitamin B12, but because I'm not very militant about keeping a raw diet, or I've used some of I call them hippie milks, the
Yeah.
almond milk or something like that, where it does have it's fortified with vitamin B12. Like my family, like I mentioned, I have uncles that were living out in the wilderness in the middle of the woods. They probably, even if they were vegans, didn't really need to worry about B12 because they're eating things right out the ground. They're drinking out of the creek bed.
Yep.
Probably get a week's worth of B12 in one drink. But for people like us that live in suburban America, we probably should go ahead and supplement. That's my opinion on it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. How about vitamin D?
Same kind of thing, I guess. If you're living in a cold climate, it's probably a wise decision. I don't think it's going to hurt you to take it, so why not?
Right.
Why wouldn't you
Right.
just go ahead and do it? It's so easy. It's not a overly expensive thing to get. I mean, even if you take the recommended amount, at least take a little bit here and there. But I mean,
And,
if you're in a place where you get lots of sunshine, you're out, and you're active, you stay in the sun, a few minutes every day. I think I remember Jack Norris, vegan registered dietitian, talking about you can get the full amount of vitamin D by just being out in the sun like 15 minutes, 2 days a week or something, if
really?
you're
Okay.
exposed to the sun. So you don't need it a lot, just some.
Right.
But
Right.
most of us, like in Ohio, with 6 months or so out of the year, it's cold climate. We're not out in the sun, so
Right. So do you take vitamin D in the winter or no?
same idea as vitamin D, B12. It's fortified in some of the foods that I eat. So no, I haven't taken it, but I probably would recommend taking it.
Okay. Okay.
As I say, not as I do, kind of.
Okay. But since so you occasionally just not through intention you're taking it because it's in one of the foods. I got you. I got you.
Yeah, I kind of don't worry about it because it is in and it's fortified in some of those foods. So I just haven't really.
Yeah.
My blood work has come back okay. I recently got insurance. I hadn't had insurance in probably the last decade. But through my wife's work and with the Obamacare, we have to have insurance now.
Right.
So I went ahead and got on my wife's insurance, and I had to go have a checkup done, and they did the blood work on me and that kind of thing, and nothing came back negative. So
Excellent.
I guess I'm
Excellent.
okay
All right.
so
All
far.
right. Let me hear your thoughts on this if you've come across anything on it. What do you think about iodine? Do you think that's significant, worthy of consideration, important, or?
Well, I know in the 30s and 40s that iodine was an issue. Lots of people had goiter. Um,
Right.
it was a major problem. So that's why they began to fortify the salts in America. So that it actually did cut down. We almost eliminated goiter entirely as a nation. So that does say something about both the amount of iodine that is in our food today and the effectiveness of supplementing iodine just in something that people usually use daily, salt. Whereas on like 80-10-10 and a lot of other raw food things, it's recommended that you not use a great deal of salt. So then you're kind of eliminating that iodine. Maybe it's good to take an iodine supplement. I actually just use a little bit of salt on my food, so I don't really worry too much about that.
Okay. Do you use like an iodized table salt, or do you use
Yeah,
like a? Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah.
just something cheap. I don't really worry about. I don't. I know like a lot of people are like, well, you need to get the Himalayan rock salt or something or whatever. Like I don't. There may be something to that. I'm not like saying it's not.
I
Uh,
hear you, man. I hear you. I use salt. I still use salt. I like salt on some things. And I think maybe that's smart that you just use the regular iodized stuff because it's got the iodine in it. You know.
yeah, I
So
mean, for a lot of people, sodium is an issue because they're having these highly processed diets where they're getting too. I know for the Healthy Americans 2015, I think, or 2020, looking forward to that, they were wanting to get the American sodium intake down below 2,000 milligrams, and that was a big deal. Like that's unheard of. You can't. How could you possibly ask Americans to do that? Like, I don't even get 1,000 milligrams in a day if I'm lucky. So, but so just putting on salt a little bit on your food or a few shakes here and there, you're not you're going to be half of what the recommended amount or to stay below is, and
yeah.
then it's lower for hypertensive and for African Americans. But
Okay. Right. Right. All right. What's your take on water? Do you drink a lot of water?
yeah, I drink I usually try to drink anywhere from 2 to 4 liters per day.
Okay.
um, I think it's good. Water's great for digestion. It's great, to help out. Maybe that's why I don't have problems digesting some of those food combining rules because I drink plenty of water.
Could be. Could
But
be.
I don't drink like a couple gallons of water a day like I hear some people recommend. It's just I don't like that, and I think
Yeah.
it's important to get enough water. But I like a lot of things. We say if we get a little bit more and we get enough, then we get better results. Well, I think enough is all you need. I don't think you're gonna get better results if you go way above that either.
I really like that. You're reminding me of something. I think Don Bennett talked about this, and it's like too much can be harmful. Too much can be harmful. So more is not always better.
Yeah, I agree completely.
All right. How about sleep? Do you go to bed at 9 and wake up at 4 in the morning, or what's your take on sleep?
Well, usually I'm very schedule oriented, so my day falls into a schedule for the most part, and it's very regimented in that way. I drop my kids off every day at 7:45 for school, and 3 days a week I train from uh, 8. I get home about 8, and I train from 8 till 10. So that is my schedule, and then the rest of the day kind of follows like that. So usually we put the kids in bed about 8 o'clock or so, or they need to start getting ready for bed, just shortly before that. And then my wife and I, we watch a show usually, or just sit and talk. And then we usually go up to bed around 9, between 9 to 9:30, and then I mean we're not going to sleep then, but we lay around for a while,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
maybe by 10:30 or 10:45 I like to go to sleep because I'm going to wake up at 6:45. So if I can sneak in 9 hours a night, that's really good. But if I only get 7.5 or 8, that's pretty good too.
Okay. Gotcha. Um, now, you talked about this a little bit earlier. Maybe you can say some more about it. When you were already married when you made this transition in diet, okay, and you said you kind of wanted to share these things with your family, and they weren't too receptive. Tell us a little bit more about that. Were they have any of the things you've recommended sunk in with them a little bit? Have you had
Yeah,
any?
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
I met my wife. We were high school sweethearts. She had just graduated actually, and I was still in high school. I moved to the area, and we started seeing each other. That was probably 1998. We got married in 2001, and
Okay.
then we had our first child, my son, in 2003.
Okay.
So, most of our kids kind of. My son now he's 10, and we just started back in 2011. So, he was 7 or 8, and um, he was actually not in. He did not like. He wanted to eat his meat. He wanted the
Yeah.
foods he had gotten used to. But my youngest daughter especially, they kind of took to it really well. Just veganism in general, and they've kind of adapted and gotten used to it over time. But now my wife, she came from, her family's from Guam, so
Uh-huh.
uh, she's she's mixed. So she's kind of like very white skinned, but then
Yeah.
she's like the really dark hair and some of the features of like people from Guam.
Right.
She grew up on a diet of rice, vegetables with little bits of chicken or something here and there mixed in. And so a lot of it was more things that she was used to anyways if we did that. But the idea of saying, well, we're going to have a spiralized zucchini pasta tonight with this tomato mixture that I made, that didn't taste or remind, and it was cold. She was like, this is cold. I'm not eating cold spaghetti. I don't know what you're thinking, but it's not happening. And so that didn't last very long.
Okay.
Eventually we just started saying, this is your dinner and this is my dinner. And
All
they
right.
followed a whole foods, plant-based diet, and cheese was big for her. She had a hard time giving up cheese.
But
Um,
she did eventually.
yeah, eventually we don't have it at home. If we go out and she can get something with cheese on it, then she may do that. But actually, we just went out for her birthday the other day, and she wanted pizza, and we went and we got pizza, and I got a pizza with hummus on it and some tomatoes and olives and mushrooms, and she got a cheese pizza. It's like, you haven't eaten cheese in a long time. Right?
But
You,
yeah, I mean, if she's only doing it once in a while, that's not. Yeah. Uh, so I want to ask you something. You've got these kids. You've got different kids kind of following different diets, and that might be an interesting uh, experiment in a sense. Have you noticed any effects in terms of health on the kids that are eating a more traditional American diet and those that are eating a more vegetable fruit based diet?
well, my kids now are eating a vegetable fruit based diet.
Okay, even your son too
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
We're the ones feeding him. He eats what we give him, or he just he's out of luck. So he's going to eat eventually.
okay. Even though he used to like meat, but now he doesn't eat meat anymore.
Well, I don't know. They're kids. I don't
Yeah.
always know what they're thinking, but they kind of get on board with the idea that this is unethical. That if we don't need to go out and kill animals in order to get sustenance, then it's not necessary. We probably shouldn't do that.
Okay.
But then I think they're kind of torn by the fact that I want that. That smells good. That has barbecue sauce on it or something. That's illuminating all of my primal like desires for whatever.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
So I don't know exactly what goes through their minds sometimes. But I mean, I spend a lot of time with them, but
Yeah.
I
Well, let me.
it's that they're torn between the two different ideas.
All right. Let me ask you this. Have you noticed if you compare them with other kids who are eating standard American diets, any difference in their level of health, or is that something hard to say?
They're a lot more lean than other kids, I
Uh-huh.
guess. They're not underweight, and if you follow the charts, when they were little and we were looking at these charts, like the growth charts from the CDC, I always thought the higher on the chart they were, the better. So you want to be up towards that 100%, and nobody ever said no, that's not right. So now I'm in dietetics, and I go through school and I'm learning. Well, actually, no, like the 100% mark, that means you're obese. That's not a good sign. You want to be kind of towards that 50% mark somewhere. So now, fortunately, at this point, they are more in that like 50% range. So they're not underweight, but when I see the other kids that they go to school with, they're more lean at least than they are. And my kids actually do weightlifting. They do, my kids are squatting and doing push-ups and pull-ups, and they
Wow,
squat with a bar. I have a smaller bar, so I have a 30-pound bar that they use, and we
that's
do for
cool.
reps instead of, whereas I add weight, for adults and for myself when I train people, because I'm also a personal trainer.
Okay,
But the kids that we say, well, today you're going to do 5 sets of 12, and then maybe next time you'll do 5 sets of 15, and they do that kind of thing, and they do karate, so they're into fitness through educational things like that, to where they learn.
very cool. That's very cool. Boy, there's so many things I want to talk to you about. And also, if you run out of time, just let me know. If you have to go, just let me know.
Yeah,
But what I'd like to get into a bit is the weightlifting. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of folks on 80-10-10 or raw food diets, they seem to be uh, easily drawn to cardio, long distance cardio type of exercises, and it's great to see some folks focusing on weightlifting. You mentioned Mike Blasity. So
yeah.
you've been lifting weights since 2011, is that right?
2012. I started May 2012.
Okay. And and so you were already vegan when you started.
Yeah.
Okay. And what happened to your body? You obviously must have gained muscle mass since you started lifting weight, right?
Yeah, I think I was about 175 or so. And keeping a similar percentage of body fat. I don't know that it's identically the same, but I mean, I didn't go in and like have like body calipers and measure myself or anything.
Right.
But without becoming obese, we'll say that I gained about 30 pounds over the course of a year and a half or so.
Yeah.
And my strength equally, tripled from where I started at. But
Very.
consider I was fairly weak when I started.
That's it. And so would it be fair to say that your caloric nutrient ratio was 80-10-10 from the point you started lifting weight?
Yeah, I mean, I experimented with different things, and I haven't kept. I'll talk about that for just a moment.
Yeah.
When I started, I experimented with like the 95-5 because like people were like, "Yeah, you'll get super shredded if you do that." That was not my experience. I did not get super shredded, as they say, uh, and I did not feel good. I did not like that for myself, at least. I know other people have said that they eat only 5% of their calories from fat, and they feel great. That was I felt really horrible, and I generally just don't recommend that now to people when they ask me about that. So I say 10% is a good range to shoot for, and I
And
haven't experimented with my protein a great deal, but my fat levels, I have, and I have noticed that I don't lose weight as well if I want to lose weight while on taking in more fat, like 15 to 20% of my calories coming from fat. But in terms of like hormone production, I know not to get too personal, but my sex drive is a lot. Um,
I- I'm
it,
glad you said that. I was hoping to ask you about that if it's not too personal, but yeah, that's interesting. So and I wonder too if you notice differences in your skin if you're having higher fat in the diet. I wonder if
personally don't. I haven't
uh,
noticed that.
okay.
I don't have great skin to begin with, I guess. So not that it's bad. It's just I've never given it a lot of mind. So
Okay, okay, gotcha. All right. So you kind of played around from as low as 5 up to 20% fat intake, and have you found something that's optimal for you? Is it like 15 or?
yeah, 15% or so seems to be a really good range for me. So I keep it in there. I still say like I follow the basic 80-10-10 outline,
Yeah,
but I don't necessarily like
rigidly.
10% fat, and I don't necessarily stick to 100% raw foods. But the idea of having a diet based around fruit and having a diet that is, 20% for the average American is a very low fat diet still. I mean, just to break it down, that is a low fat diet.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's great. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, I think it's really good for weightlifters, especially perhaps young guys that are trying to put on weight and they're interested in bodybuilding, to see that you gained about 30 pounds of muscle mass on a relatively low protein diet.
Yeah.
So these guys are chugging down, protein shakes and spending a lot of money on that, and you gained 30 pounds of muscle mass. Now, maybe you can talk about this. You've been doing this for a while. Is some of the muscle mass you see on these guys that are drinking tons of protein, is that real muscular strength, or is it, sometimes it's referred to as kind of a bloating effect that occurs because that's what happens when you eat that much protein?
Where I really started to take off, because I didn't get a lot of results for my first 6 months or so. I mean, I did, but looking back, I could have done a lot better in that time. But I worked out twice a week for maybe an hour each time. My first 6 months, I was in my parents' garage, going over there and using their weights.
Yeah.
I'm cheap. I didn't like the idea of going and getting a gym membership.
Hell yeah.
So I'd go over there and I'd do some squats, some bench presses, some deadlifts, and I was doing the right movements, but I was only doing them once a week or so.
Mm-hmm.
And it just wasn't enough to get the maximal amount of muscle growth. So after probably about 6 months, I thought you might ask this, so I was going over the timeline in my head of how some of this stuff worked out. It was probably November of 2012 there. I got a gym membership, just cheap. It was like $15 a month or something.
Okay.
And I went in and I was like, all right, I can go in here all I want now. So I followed one of these bodybuilding programs and I went in 5 days a week and worked each muscle group. And after about 3 months of that, so I'm 9 months into lifting now, I found out, you know what, I haven't really made any progress. I'm not any stronger than I was 3 months ago following this crazy bodybuilding body split program.
Hmm.
So I was also an exercise science student at that time, and I was studying. I had to write a paper on periodization, where you use different rep ranges and things over time, and I discovered 5x5. The 5x5 program was popularized by Reg Park back in like the 40s or 50s or something. And a lot of other great lifters, like Steve Reeves was an American bodybuilder that followed that. But those guys, they weren't just big. They were big and strong. And I think that when you look at natural drug-free athletes, there's a huge correlation between strength and size.
Okay. Clarify that for us. Say that again, and then break that down for the viewer.
Okay, so a drug-free bodybuilder, meaning they're using no steroids, they're using no growth hormone, there's no any of those types of insulin or whatever guys inject. I don't really know a lot about that, but I know what I've seen from other people and what drug users that I've known personally and on YouTube have shared. So just drawing from their information, it seems like there are guys that can just get big with minimal lifting, and they will look big and look muscular, but they're not necessarily strong. Whereas for somebody who's not on any of those things, they're only just lifting and eating a good diet or whatever. They're not using any drugs. If you want to get bigger, you also need to get stronger. I guess is my point there.
Yeah. So, do you think it would be rather easy to find somebody who doesn't look really pumped, but they could easily outlift a guy that looks really pumped?
Maybe.
Okay.
I mean, bear in mind that the average person is not on drugs and is not around people using steroids. In terms of like protein powders, which is where you were going with the question, I kind of veered off there, but protein powders and that kind of thing, I don't know how much inflammation or water retention within the muscle that those things cause. So I don't usually even pay attention to it. When I'm at somebody and I'm like assessing, is this person a great lifter? I'm thinking, are they strong? Are they able to perform the lifts well?
Yeah.
How they look really isn't of great importance, I guess, to me. It is, I guess, in a sense, because usually when you see somebody, you're like, dang, that guy. But I don't know.
I like what you're saying. It's kind of a shallow, superficial way to look at weightlifting. The reason I ask it is it seems to be so prevalent within the broader society, and it is kind of a way that we kind of ooh and ah. We put these people on the front of magazine covers and we think it's really amazing. But I like this point that you're saying, and I think it speaks to something about like what is natural health and what does natural health look like, you know?
Yeah, and genetics play a big part in that too.
Yeah.
I don't have bad genetics, but I don't have fantastic genetics either. But if you don't mind me flexing for just a second, I'll make a point. And
Yeah.
I show you like my arm here, and I flex, and you look somebody with really great genetics. Their bicep might start over here and extend over. So without having more muscle per se, they'll just appear bigger. They'll look bigger. They'll have that full rounded effect. Or Arnold, Schwarzenegger. People look at him; he had great genetics. The way his muscle was shaped.
Okay.
As we can't control how our muscle is shaped. That's just a genetic thing we're born with. That it inserts in one area and it inserts in another area.
Right.
So, my ligament or my elbow's down here, but my bicep inserts here. Then there's all this space here. It doesn't look as big and as full. Whereas somebody with a little, which mine actually aren't bad. I don't have bad genetics for that, but they're just mediocre. They're kind of like the normal person. I'm the average guy.
Gotcha.
So that plays a big part in how we look at some of those people too. And each muscle group comes with that same set of factors. It's not just arms, but
Right. Okay. So there was a whole thing I was going to ask you. Okay, yeah, you mentioned the 5x5. Can you clarify what that is again? That's does that mean 5 body parts, 5 days a week, or does that mean 5 reps?
Glad you asked. That's a good point. Well, the typical bodybuilding idea that we've developed here more recently is that you work chest one day, you work legs another day, you work arms on this given day, or shoulders on another day, and that is really a more modern concept, and I think that it has been perpetuated by drug users more than anything, because I think those are the guys that get more results from that. They don't notice a difference. Whereas when you look back at the old school bodybuilders like Steve Reeves and Reg Park, that I mentioned before, they didn't work out like that. I don't know that they were drug free per se, but at least drugs were minimal or weren't as available readily to them at that point. So maybe they were drug free, and if they used drugs, they didn't use near the amounts that are used today. They follow these full body workouts. So they wouldn't just go in and work one body part. That would be a silly concept to them. They would go in and they would work. They didn't work body parts at all. They would work the squat. So usually those programs start with squat, and then you'll do bench press, and then you'll do a row or a rowing motion of some kind, and maybe some accessory movements aside from that.
Huh.
You'd come in on another day, and you'd usually start out with squats again, or front squats, or some kind of squatting motion. Squats were always huge then, and you would go into doing like an overhead press or push press or some other kind of pressing movement that wasn't a bench press. And then you may do deadlifts or something like that. And then again, more accessory movements. But the 5x5 is that you do 5 sets of 5 reps. And usually you progress, say 5 pounds every time, you accomplish that goal. And then there were subtle differences between the different types of programs. Some of the 5x5s were more for building just strength, and they were more applied to athletes that needed to train regularly aside from weightlifting. And then like the Reg Park 5x5 was more geared specifically towards bodybuilding. And it had 5 straight sets of 5, or you would do like 3 heavy sets anyways.
Okay.
Whereas some of the ones that were more for athletes or for strength athletes, you would just build up to 1 heavy set of 5, but you wouldn't do 5 sets across the board. So you might do a set of 135, then 185, then 225, then 275, and finally 315, and that would be your 5 sets. Whereas the straight sets that was more for bodybuilding was you would do like 275 pounds for 5 sets of 5 reps.
Okay. So how about you? What do you do personally now? Do you work your full body when you go in? You do. Okay. And do you do that 5 days a week, or do you do it 3 days a week, or
just 3 days a week? That's all.
3 days a week.
Yeah. I think that there are some benefits to doing doing like say 5, 6, or even 7 days a week, but they're mostly for strength. I don't think you'll build a lot more muscle that way, but like an Olympic lifter, or in my case, like a power lifter that needs to practice the lifts often in order to make improvements in technique and from the sports aspect side of it. And then you kind of have to adjust your total volume because you can't come in and just go balls to the wall 7 days a week and still progress. You'll get too fatigued and that way.
Yeah.
So you kind of need to say, well, this day's going to be a lighter day and that kind of thing.
You know, you allude to something interesting there. Maybe you kind of explained it, and maybe it's just that I'm slow, but you're saying that there's a bit of a difference between muscle development and capacity for strength. Is that accurate?
To some degree.
Okay.
I mean, it's not necessarily that you can get better at the lifts to some degree without necessarily growing more muscle, but only in a small part. I mean,
Okay.
I'm not talking like you're gonna get insanely strong and still look like an average person. You,
Okay.
for the most part, in general, if you get stronger, you're gonna look stronger too. It may not be a noticeable amount, like you may add 30, 40 pounds to your bench press, and you say, oh, I can kind of notice, but it's not going to be like, dang, that guy got jacked all of a sudden. But in terms of practicing the lifts, the technique is huge too. So you can make subtle improvements through just improving your technique over time,
Okay.
depending on how bad it was, to begin with. My technique, I practice lifts pretty often, so it's a lot better than a lot of other people. So
All right.
it's just subtle, I guess, is my point.